Snacks in hand, the vibe is set, and once I start, you won't forget. Don't eat too much, cause you gotta stay fine. But come on, bestie, yeah. Hey, bestie, I missed you. I did. Got your snack. You got your cola. You got your rolling equipment. Yeah, you ain't slick. I'm getting a lot of comments lately saying how I haven't been in their For You page for months. So if you're one of those people, welcome back. Still a family and we still love each other. Anyways, on to the story. For the sake of this story, let's call this man Junior. Now, Junior used to work at a motel. I wouldn't even call it a hotel. One of those places people stay at when they really, really don't have another option. You get it? Anyway, he was doing an overnight shift. He was a receptionist. I should add that. And he was working the night shift one time, and around midnight, I'm lying so hard because this is important to the story. Around 2:40 a.m. exactly, man walks into the motel soaking wet. No luggage, no shoes, just soaking wet. Came in and he asked for a room. So then Junior checks the system and sees that there are no more rooms available. So he's like, "Oh, sir, I'm so sorry. Like, there's no more rooms available. Are you okay? Like, do you need help? You're all wet." It's not raining outside or nothing like that. He just walked in just all wet. So he tells the guy, like, there's no more rooms, but if you need help, I can help you. Like, we could call the cops. Do you need somebody to call? And the man was like, there's no rooms. Junior's like, yeah, I'm sorry. And the man is like, oh, I forgot. I'm already in a room. I'm in room 417. And immediately Junior's like, you're in what room? He's like, room 417. And Junior's like, are you sure it's like 417? Because room 417 hadn't been used in months. As far as he know, that room it just doesn't get used. Like, he was told by his managers and everybody that works there knows that room is not to be rented out because it's just like broken or something. He doesn't really know why. He just know it doesn't work. So Junior's like, sir, I'm sorry. It can't be room 417 because that room hasn't been used for months. Like, it doesn't get used at all. That man's smile dropped immediately. And he says to Junior, then who's sleeping in my bed? Right when he said that, the side door opened. One of the people that are staying there, like a couple, they're coming out laughing, having a great time. And so they both kind of like turned to look at the couple. And when Junior turned back, there's no man. There's no man there. The floor is not wet. There's nobody there. So obviously Junior's freaked out. Junior's like, what the hell just happened? And there's no way he went out the door because y'all see how it's a motel, a cheap motel. Them doors is loud. If he would have walked out, they would have heard that door just like they heard the door of the couple coming in. Junior's like, I'm tripping. Like, I gotta stop smoking. A few minutes later, the manager comes around, and so Junior calls the manager and kind of like explains to the manager, like what just happened. And Junior's like, is there a way, like, I could see the security cameras? Because, like, I really think, like, I really was talking to this man. Manager's like, yeah, we'll check the security camera, but do you know why that room hasn't been used? Junior's like, nah, I never really cared. I just know it hasn't been used. And so I tell the customers, this room don't get used. Apparently, that room is not being used because there was a man who committed in that room. Man had turned on the bathtub, did what he was supposed to do, and stayed in that bathtub, and the entire room ended up getting flooded because they didn't find him for like after 2 days that he did it. That room ended up having really, really bad like flood damage and just a whole lot of other stuff. And like, nobody really wants to stay in a room where somebody, But when he heard that, he's like, oh nah, I need to see that security footage. And so they go and they're looking at the security footage. And they're looking at Junior talking to nothing. Junior is having a conversation with the air. There's nobody there. But Junior's like, yo, there was a man that walked in, soaking wet, asking me for a room. I told him that there's no room available. And he told me, actually, I already have a room. And he sees himself having that conversation on camera. But there's nobody there. So he wanted to share his story because that was like the creepiest thing that ever happened to him. Anyways, don't forget to go get your cola because it's part of the routine now. igbeverage.com. Don't forget to grab your ebook so when things like this happen to you, you know how to cleanse yourself so it doesn't stick to you, Okay, I love you. Bye.
So one of my creepy storytime followers, Salma, sent this story in, and it comes with receipts. Salma is from a northern part in Nigeria, and she's also a pastry chef and owns her own home bakery. So about 2 months ago, she was recording the leftover tres leches cakes just for content, and when she played back the video, she noticed something. So around 6 seconds into the video, she hears a voice. She said at first she thought it was her talking to herself because she often does that, but then she remembers that when she's recording a video, she even holds her breath so that she doesn't have any extra shaking. She said that everyone else had left for the day and there were no TVs or radios playing, so it couldn't have been that. The only other person that was at the home was her assistant, and they were outside, and she even confirmed that yes, they were outside when she was recording this video. So she's playing this video over and over again, trying to make out what this voice is saying. So she very quickly realizes that this voice isn't in English or Hausa, the other language that she knows, and she started to sound it out. So she sounds it out and looks it up, and sure enough, it's a Spanish phrase. Now, I'm going to play the video at the end of this clip, but what it was that is said in the clip, and I heard it too, is que sapa bueno. And it means that tastes good in Spanish. Now, she wants to just reiterate that she does not speak Spanish, and neither do any of the other people that would have or could have been there. So it definitely wasn't any of them. She says that normally she doesn't even play back videos. She just mutes them and puts them to music, but something compelled her to watch this. Like maybe they wanted her to hear it, which is kind of nice. And she said she wasn't even creeped out. She had this very calm feeling about it. Like, it didn't mean any harm. She said she kept wondering for days, like, why in Spanish? And then she thought maybe because tres leches has the Spanish origin. Also, how awesome is it that she's being complimented from the other side? I hope that when I'm a ghost, I can still taste the delicacies of life. All right, now take a listen and let me know what you think in the comments.
I think my best friend is haunting me. Spooky story time. A follower named Mike sent me the story, and he said that in 2016, his best friend passed away suddenly in a car accident. They had been friends for a very long time, and he took this very hard. He went into depression mode, as I completely understand, and his girlfriend even broke up with him because he was just so unattached from the world, from her, from literally everything. He wanted to start fresh, so he moved to a different city and he rented this house, small house, 1-bedroom house. He just wanted to just start fresh. With time, he ended up meeting some neighbors, and they were very nice, and they had 2 pet dogs. He said that sometimes they would have barbecues and they would invite him over, and he loves all kinds of animals, not just dogs, but he would try to pet the neighbors' dogs, and they would be kind of aggressive, not wanting to bite him, but they'd be kind of like looking past him or next to him. They would look at him, but then look next to him and kind of like, you know what I mean? He noticed this, but didn't want to bring it up because honestly, he said that it would just freak him out. Well, one day, him and his neighbors, he didn't have any friends in the city, so him and his neighbors, they all decided to go walk at this big flea market. They're walking around, he's drinking a lemonade, he's looking around, and this woman approaches him, and she claims to be a palm reader. She grabs his hands, she looks at it, she looks at him, she looks next to him, and she says, "Your friend says thank you." And Mike is like, "What are you talking about?" This palm reader tells him, "He told me to tell you thank you." Now Mike is like, okay, what's going on? So he asks, "Who said that?" And the palm reader is like, "Your best friend." And Mike's eyes are getting watery. He's like, "Okay, how do you know this? What do you know that I don't know?" The palm reader said, "Did his girlfriend try to reach out to you and kind of hit on you?" And Mike just stands back and he's like, "Yeah, like how do you know this?" The palm reader is like, "He's telling me to tell you thank you for being a true friend," and being like, "Nah." Mike literally couldn't hold his tears back. He ended up leaving the flea market. He went straight home, and he doesn't know what to think about a situation like this because he's never really believed or not believed in the paranormal. He's been very indifferent, but literally this exact thing happened. His best friend passed. few months later, his best friend's then girlfriend was trying to kind of like holler at him, kind of be a little flirty with him. And Mike was like, excuse me, like, you were with my best friend. Absolutely not. So Mike is like, how was anybody going to know this? Because he never mentioned this to anybody. He didn't want things to be weird. He didn't want things to be weird with the rest of the friend group. He did not bring it up at all. So how would this person possibly know that this happened? I believe in ghosts. I believe in the spiritual world. I believe in all of it. But do you think this is a coincidence? I don't think so. Thank you to Mike so much for sending me this story. If you guys have any stories that you'd like for me to read, please send them via DM or email because I'd love to read them. And I will see you guys in the next spooky story. Bye!
So people think that black magic only destroys enemies, but what they don't tell you is that it comes back eventually through your own bloodline. I am back with another spooky story, and I'm just gonna warn you right now. You may not want to watch this one at night. So we're going to call the person who submitted this story Nandi. So Nandi says in her family, there's a rule that has been passed down very firmly. And it is that you never mess with the dead. And if you do, the consequences are yours to face alone. Well, Nandi had an uncle, though she never really considered him one. But by blood, they were uncle and niece. He was deeply involved in all forms of black magic and rejected anything that had to do with church, God, the Bible, etc. Now, Nandi's grandmother, on the other hand, was completely God-centered. Whenever those two are in the same place, it felt like a battle between an angel and a demon, and this wasn't a secret. Everybody knew this. So Nandi's grandmother knew that she couldn't change her son. However, she made it her mission to protect the grandchildren. She swore that none of them would ever have anything to do with the things that he practiced. However, grandma failed to protect one child, although she never stopped praying that God would keep her safe. What made this all more painful was that her grandmother never met this child. She never even seen this child's face. So that child was the uncle's firstborn, a daughter. He hid her so well that no one truly knew what she looked like. Only a few adults in the family even knew she existed. No one spoke about her. There were no pictures of her anywhere. Even the mother and younger sister somehow had never seen her. So much so that the younger sister grew up believing that she was the firstborn. And to this day, that girl doesn't know that she has an older sister. Now, the real firstborn, nobody knows her name. Only a few adults in the family knows. Now, back to the grandmother. While her husband was still alive, the grandmother bought a piece of land and guarded it fiercely. After her husband's death, she continued to protect the land. The second the uncle found out about that land, he became restless. He wanted to sell it immediately, by any means necessary. Now, the grandmother knew his intentions, but refused to give it to him. Actually, she planned on giving the land to her second son. That uncle could not stand the idea that that land was going to go to someone else. He fought for it for years. He performed countless acts of black magic. People died, and he still couldn't get the land. Well, when spiritual attacks failed, he turned physical. He would attack the grandmother repeatedly, physically and emotionally. She was an old woman, clearly not as strong as him, but she refused to give in. And despite everything he did, he could not harm her spiritually or socially. So during this ongoing battle over the property, remember the hidden daughter? Yeah, she winds up passing away. And that's when a few people finally learned that she ever existed. Her burial was worse than death itself. It was done in secret, as though she never even lived at all. So 1 year after the daughter's burial, the grandmother dies from an illness. So on the day of the burial, the mother, uncle, and first son all get into this terrible confrontation. The uncle said some unforgivable things to the mother, which even made her cry. The grandmother was buried on a Friday, and it is their tradition to go to church before and after the burial. So they went to church that Sunday. Well, guys, during that service, the pastor called her second uncle aside and warned him, told him to build a house far away from the grandmother's home. He told him that the first son was going to try to claim the property by any means necessary, and that if he failed, he would unalive him either physically or spiritually. The second uncle said there was nothing he could do. The pastor warned him again to think about his family before making any decisions. Honestly, you guys, this story is so long, and y'all see my face. I'm tired, and I gotta get to work soon. This story actually did break my heart, like knowing how it ends. Wow. So you guys, y'all know the drill. Y'all gonna have to come back for part 2.
This is why I don't read any stories about demons at night. I haven't even started the video and there's already stuff happening. So if you're new here, hi. I usually talk about some pretty scary stuff, and I have an email where anyone finds this page can send me their ghost story. I get a lot of submissions, and a lot of them are about ghosts and mimics and paranormal happenings like that. There are a select few stories where I genuinely cannot describe the way that it makes me feel. And for context purposes, I have done topics like this before, and I actually have talked about the very first story that I got about demons and a demonic entity being in this person's home. I have read the second scariest story that I have ever read, and I will get into why. And I'm going to sound absolutely crazy. I don't want to give specifics of this thing because it freaked me out so bad, and it had repercussions on my boyfriend. To the point where I didn't even think I was going to make this video. But I do think it's important to talk about how talking about things like this can conjure this stuff to happen. But anyways, I've never talked about this sensation that I feel ever, but sometimes when I talk about very specific stories, it's not all the time, it's with very select stories, I feel like there is something there. And I have chills even talking about this, but I felt like with this very specific story, that there was something in the corner of the room I film in watching me. And I've had this feeling before. Sometimes I'm just psyching myself out. I know that. And I'll be very open about something. I get scared talking about certain topics because it just freaks me out. But I could not shake the feeling of, and I'm like looking over there, I could not shake the feeling of these yellow eyes staring at me. Now, not like glowing yellow eyes like a wolf, like, no, human eyes, but they're yellow, like bright yellow. And I've never, ever thought about that. I've never felt like that. And I've never thought about somebody with eyes that color. And after I was done filming, I literally, it was like it didn't go away. It was still there. I could still feel it. I felt like it was watching me still. So I called my boyfriend in and I'm like, hey, this is what's going on. I feel like there's something here. I feel like it's watching me, and it has these yellow eyes. And to him, seeing is believing, and we've talked about that before on this page. And he was like, you know, I see you. I understand why you're scared, but it's just a story. Like, until something happens to me from something, like, it's not gonna scare me. And my heart dropped in that moment, and I said, don't say that. And to me, in my brain, the moment you say something like that, something will happen to you. So after the conversation, I took myself in, but I just cannot shake like why I was imagining this person with yellow eyes. So I just look up, I saw a woman with yellow eyes, blah, 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 blah. And if you've been here a long time, then you know I do not believe in coincidences. And in this circumstance, it just fit too well with the whole demonic thing, the yellow eye. Like, no. I don't tell my boyfriend that. He comes to bed later on. Everything's fine. We normally don't sleep with all the lights off. I like to have a lamp on because I am admittedly scared of the dark. And in the middle of the night, I wake up to him choking. And it started off as like a cough. And I woke up from his initial coughing, but he abruptly sits up, starts gagging, stands up, and is hunched over, like trying to breathe and collect himself. I look at the time on my phone, just very curious on if I'm going to be able to go back to bed or not before I have to get up for work. 3 a.m. And the next day I text him at work and I'm like, hey, not to scare you, but I did look up what that meant and blah, 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 blah. And it just freaked both of us out. But yeah, that has been my experience for the last couple of days. That's kind of why I haven't really been making videos. It really freaked me out. But anyways, that's going to do it for me. Stay tuned for more stories. This is a terrifying story about a mimic. If you're new here, hi. I usually talk about pretty scary stuff, and I actually have an email where anyone who finds this page can send me their ghost stories. And this is one of the submissions that I've received. So let's get into it. The person who sent me this story would like to remain anonymous, and for obvious reasons, I'm going to respect that. And if you don't know what a mimic spirit is, then let me tell you. Now, in my opinion, mimics are the scariest kinds of spirits that you can have around you because they can mimic people that you know and love. And a lot of the time they like taunting the people that they're scaring, which in my experience has been very effective. I did get very scared. The woman who sent me this says that she was fresh out of high school, 18 years old, living with her grandparents, and the way that her room was set up was in the basement. So the basement was an open floor concept, which means there were minimal walls. And from the way that it's being described in the email, it sounds like all of the walls that were there were just curtains put up to mimic having a room instead of having like this gigantic singular room for their granddaughter to sleep in. So it's important to note that this was an older 3-story house, and this occurred in the middle of the day. Additional important context is her great-grandmother was living with her grandparents at the time, but her great-grandmother and her grandparents would just stay upstairs because they couldn't get around all that well in the house. So the basement was kind of off limits anyways because their granddaughter lived downstairs, but they didn't really go down there to begin with because they can't get around all that well, just to set up the story. Now, the person who told me this says that it was around 10 a.m. when this happened. She had just gotten dressed and she was sitting on her bed. Her great-grandma was upstairs watching soap operas, and her grandmother was just upstairs also. So she gets up, gets ready to open the curtain. That is her main door, and clear as day. Right as she's about to open this curtain, she hears her great-grandmother on the other side of the curtain say her name. And immediately, the person who sent me this email is taken aback and is like, how did my great-grandmother get downstairs so quickly, and why did I not hear anybody come down the stairs? So she's just standing frozen in fear, looking at this curtain and what could be on the other side of it, because she knows that her great-grandmother is not on the other side. And by the time she built up the courage to pull the curtain back, there was nothing there. So she runs upstairs and sees that her great-grandmother is still in the living room watching her soap operas. She then asks her great-grandmother, like, did you say my name? How did you get downstairs? Her great-grandmother proceeds to tell her that, no, I didn't go in the basement, and no, I didn't call your name because I thought you were still sleeping. So then the person who sent me this email is telling her great-grandmother, like, what had happened to her in the basement. And her great-grandmother proceeds to tell her that when she was a little girl, her mother told her that if you hear somebody's voice who has passed away, you will pass away in the same manner. But the person who sent me this email says that she didn't understand why the voice sounded like her grandmother until she learned about mimic spirits. And the more I read submissions, the more I realize that mimic experiences are actually very common for people. If you have a ghost story, be sure to submit it in the link in my bio. But anyways, that's going to do it for me. Stay tuned for my ghost stories.
Do you believe in vampires? Because if you do not, this story may change your mind. So the person who sent this in is a nurse, and so she needs to stay anonymous because it was one of her clients. So I'm going to call her Bailey. Bailey used to work as a caregiver about 10 years ago. She's from El Paso, Texas. Now there are a lot of like farm-like towns surrounding El Paso, Texas, and one of them is called Fabens, Texas, and this is where this occurred. So she gets a job in Fabens, Texas, and she goes out to this house with her boss and a coworker because her boss is introducing them to the client. So they show up to the house, and when they show up to the house, it's the son-in-law, the daughter, and the client. She said that immediately when she walked in, she just felt incredibly uneasy, and she looked at the daughter's eyes, and the daughter's eyes were like very dark. And she was talking to the son-in-law and the daughter, and while she's talking to them, she looks over and she notices that the client is just staring at her. And when I say staring, I mean she felt like he was, her exact words were, staring into my soul. It made me incredibly uncomfortable. She also said that his eyes were even darker than the daughter's, and that the son-in-law just had normal eyes. So they're in the middle of talking, they get done with the introduction, and she said that the son-in-law looks right at her and says, please stay safe. If anything happens, please call me. And I mean, if you need help in any way. So she was kind of like, okay. She kind of just brushes it off and she leaves after she's done with the introduction. She's supposed to come back at 9 p.m. She shows back up at 8:45. When she walks into the house, it's the daughter. Just the daughter is there and just the client. And the daughter tells her that there's a baby monitor and that she'll be using that baby monitor to be keeping an eye and an ear out for the client. Now, the baby monitor was like right above where the daughter was standing, and she said that while she was talking to the daughter, she happened to glance up at the baby monitor and she could not see the client in the baby monitor. So she just assumed that he was either in the room somewhere else or he was not in the room. So the daughter gets done with talking to her and she's like, okay, I'm gonna go to bed around 10 p.m. and that's when you can kind of start paying attention to the baby monitor. And so she's like, okay, bet. So the daughter goes to bed around 10 p.m. She's looking at the baby monitor and she still cannot see her client. So she gets worried. So she goes and checks on him. So the baby monitor was facing directly at his bed. So she had a full view of his bed. So she walks into the room, she opens a door, and she nearly jumps out of her skin because she sees that the client is laying in bed. So she's kind of just like, oh, you scared me. And she, makes sure that he's okay and everything. And then she goes back to the baby monitor and she checks. And again, she cannot see the client. So she's like, what the hell is going on? So she walks back into the room. And this time she faces the camera so that it's directly on him completely. And then she walks back out of the room. She goes back to the baby monitor. She checks the baby monitor again. Still nothing. So she's like, you know what? This camera must be defective. Like, I'll just listen for him. So she finishes her shift that night and she comes back the next night. The next night, the same exact thing happens. She looks at the baby monitor. She cannot see him. She walks into the room. He's in bed. So she's like, what is going on? So she's like, okay, whatever. It's got to be broken or something. So she just goes back out into the living room and she just relaxes. And then she hears something. She hears boom, boom, boom. Like someone is walking around in the client's bedroom. She's listening for a second and she's like, there's no way he's up right now. And then she starts to hear this whispering sound, like this light whispering sound, but she hears it, like it's clear as day. So she's a little freaked out, but she has to go check on the client now. So she goes back into the room, she checks on the client, he's in bed. So she walks back out in the living room and now she's freaked out because now she's hearing stuff. She can't see him on the baby monitor and she's wondering about like the eyes and all this other stuff. Her head is just racing. Then suddenly she hears this scream come from the bedroom. The client is screaming. And so she is in shock at this point. So she jumps up and she runs into his room and he is fine. He is laying there like nothing happened whatsoever, just staring at her with those black eyes. So at this point, she's like, I have had enough. So she goes and checks on the daughter, and the daughter is fast asleep, even though she just heard screaming. So she goes back out into the living room. She checks the baby monitor again. He's still not on the baby monitor, and she is terrified at this point. She said that this went on all night long. Him screaming, her going into the room, and him just up staring at her. Each time, not saying anything, just staring at her. He's not sleeping at all, and she hears him screaming, but it's like not him, or it is him, and he's just messing with her. She's also hearing the walking around in his room, and each time she hears the walking around, she's going into that room immediately afterwards, so she would know if he was up walking around. She leaves that night, and she calls her boss the next day, and she's like, listen, I'm not going back to that house. There is no way you can get me to go back to that house. It's just too much. And she tells her boss what was going on. Her boss was like, okay, that's fine. You don't have to go back there. We'll send someone else there. So they send someone else there. And the next day, they both get called into the office. Apparently, that girl had went through the same thing that she went through and had complained about it. So when they get called into the office, their boss is like, listen, what's going on with you two? What happened? So they tell her everything. And they tell her about the baby monitor. So her boss is like, okay, well, why don't we just talk to the daughter about the baby monitor? So they call the daughter and they're like, listen, some weird stuff has been going on. My employees are complaining. And also, something is wrong with your baby monitor. Apparently, your father is not showing up on the baby monitor. We think it's broken. The daughter, instead of being like, okay, I'll check the baby monitor, terminated services right away. No explanation, just terminated services after 3 days. So what do you guys think happened here? What do you think this was? Do you think that this was a broken baby monitor and just some really creepy family? Or do you think that this was something else? She thinks that it was a vampire. What do you guys think the creepiest part of the story was? Because I gotta be honest with you, him screaming and then her going into the room and seeing that he's just sitting there staring at her creeped me out. That would freak me out. If someone was just screaming and then you go into the room and they're just laying there staring at you, like, oh. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know of any cameras that are broken that show the room but not a person. Is that possible? I'm not very tech savvy when it comes to this type of stuff. You would think that I would be because I'm a content creator, but I'm not. So if somebody could please tell me if this is a thing, drop it in the comments below. I just think there is so much that we don't know, right? That a lot of us intuitively think that we know, but that we don't know. I think there's so much out there than we're made to believe. And I mean, for instance, look at that alien video that girl just made. I know you guys saw it. I can't go into full detail about it because I don't want to get in trouble, but it was crazy. That video, I would listen to it at night and I was like, oh my God, this is insane. She had red hair. It got like 3 million views. That video really got me thinking. Like, I was like, there's just no way. There's no way. There's so much that we don't know. Okay. Now I'm going to do my favorite part, which is the shout outs. Gabby Marshall _ you are so cute. You left a comment underneath a video where the creator was giving something away and they said tag a creator that you follow, and you left the nicest comment, and I appreciate you doing that so much. I love it when people tag me and say nice things. Like, it melts my heart. You are the best. Thank you so much for that type of support. It means so much to me. Thank you for supporting me. Thank you for watching my videos. Thank you for commenting supporting and being kind. You truly have no idea what an impact you have on me when you do things like that, and I just wanted to say thank you personally, and I love you, girl. Walk.Kenzie, thank you so much for what you said. You left such a nice comment, and I appreciate that so much. I do agree with you. I get some awesome stories. I love the stories that I get. I appreciate you commenting and being kind and pushing my videos out. I appreciate you supporting me and watching me. Like, just that in general makes me so happy. Thank you so much for what you said. You truly made my day. You have no idea, again, like what the impact that you have on me when you say something like that. So I appreciate you so much, girl, and I love you. I'm gonna go crawl in my bed and like literally just, I have a flight to catch tomorrow and I don't have a real ID. And I'm going home to see my family for Christmas, and I live in New York, so I have to go to JFK and do this. Please pray for me that they're going to let me on the flight, because the chances are so slim. So I will have to take a rental car all the way to Florida if not. So just pray for me, please, because I'm sick and I cannot drive 17 hours. My name is Kaisa, and I tell your paranormal experiences on here, or ones that you recommend, every single night. So if you're into that, hit that follow button. And I don't have time for the rest, but spooky kisses, haunted hugs, and have a spooky night. Love you guys.
Let's read another scary story that was DM'd to us. I grew up in Hungary in the outer districts of Budapest, about an hour away from the city center. For context, my childhood didn't happen in a busy neighborhood or a modern apartment. Instead, I was raised in this old family house that originally belonged to my grandmother. The place was at least 100 years old, and it stood on a huge piece of land. The house itself was built like a long row of 4 connected units, almost like a tiny forgotten terrace. Many people used to live there decades ago, but when my dad inherited it, he bought the others out. We lived in the first unit, and he kept the other 3 locked. And when I say locked, I mean truly locked. No electricity, no water, just darkness and an unbelievable coldness that never left those rooms. Really, even if it was summer, the temperature was negative in there. Inside one of those units, it felt like entering another century. There were old family photos from the previous neighbors, almost 100 years old, scattered around the room. The air was so freezing that I felt it straight in my bones, like I could see my breath. I'm not even kidding. Even back then, I felt something strange about that place, as if it was holding onto memories that didn't belong to us. But the moment I will never forget happened one summer evening. My sister and I were outside in the garden playing volleyball. It was getting dark, and at one point we accidentally hit the ball toward one of the windows of the locked house. I ran to pick it up, and when I got close to that window, I swear I saw someone looking at me. Not just looking, but smiling. It was standing there in the darkness behind the glass, staring straight into my eyes with this faint, unsettling smile. I saw a man's face, but it was blurry because the window was so dirty. I saw his eyes, and I saw how his eyes were shaped, like he was smiling. That's why I know I didn't hallucinate it. I felt that sudden shock, like my whole body froze. I screamed, and my sister and I ran inside our house and told our dad that someone was in one of the locked houses. He immediately took his keys and walked in with us, but inside there was nothing. No footsteps, no sound, only that unbelievable cold, the kind that feels almost unnatural. Still, I can see it so clearly in my memory, that figure in the window, the darkness behind them, and that smile as they held eye contact with me. Later, we moved to the city center, and the house is still standing today, but I've never gone back inside those locked rooms. Even thinking about it sends a chill down my spine. I never really believed in ghosts, but growing up in a place like that, an old, isolated row house taught me that there might be things in this world we can't fully explain. Oh, that is creepy! I live in Texas, and I don't know why, but whenever I read stories that happen in like different countries, it's just almost scarier. But I'm really glad that this person no longer lives in that house, and I hope nobody ever does again. Maybe they should just be torn down.
I keep you right next to me, only just in my dream. I see you in right the grind, don't wake me up from sleep. I think I'm losing my grip, everything, all the pain. Why you showed up in my life like this so sudden, oh God, no.
This story reminds me of Goosebumps, and you'll understand why at the end, but the story is called Family Friendly. Jimmy was fed up with Martin. Martin had been Jimmy's good friend for many, many years, but lately, Jimmy began to suspect that Martin was manipulating him. Whenever they associated with each other, Jimmy always felt that Martin was forcing him to feel, act, and think a certain way. When they spoke to each other, Jimmy felt like he simply had to say the things Martin wanted him to say. This went on for a long time. It got worse to the point that Jimmy felt he had absolutely no free will when Martin was around. Jimmy longed to be free to say the things to Martin that he truly wanted to say, but he never had the courage to do so until one day. Jimmy, with every ounce of willpower he had, flipped up both his middle fingers in Martin's face and shouted, "Fuck you, I'm done being manipulated by you." The adults in the audience covered their children's ears, shocked that this was supposed to be a family-friendly performance. Martin, the ventriloquist, was absolutely terrified.
This is a ghost story titled Something I Never Shared with My Family. If you're new here, hi. I usually talk about some pretty scary stuff, and I have an email where anyone who finds this page can send me their ghost stories. And this is one of them. The person who sent me this email did not specify if they want to remain anonymous or not, so just to be safe, I am going to keep them anonymous. The person who sent me this email opens it up by saying that she has experienced paranormal activity since she was a very small child, and she's at a point in her life where she regularly sees and hears spirits. It says, quote, "I know it sounds crazy, but this is something that has followed me for years." And for necessary context purposes, the woman who sent me this email says that she spent a lot of her childhood in a village town in Bulgaria with her grandparents. It specifically says that that home in the village was like her second home. This house was very old and had about 5 bedrooms in it. She says on the first floor of the home, her grandparents live right next to the entrance, and at the end of the hallway is her room. However, she says that in her bedroom in the village, there was a portrait of her late uncle who passed away when he was very young. She says that they never met, but she was always strangely drawn to him and his portrait. It specifically says that she used to stare at this portrait until she felt the room shift, always to something darker. She also says that she did not like playing in this bedroom because she just felt like there was someone watching her, and at night she felt like there was someone standing over her. And one night, after dinner, she goes to her room and says that she was super duper bored, so she was just staring at this portrait. When all of a sudden, she gets this overwhelming urge to knock on the wardrobe in the room. And she specifies that there was nothing special about this wardrobe. It was built into the wall, but it just held like a bunch of clothes, silverware, dishes, etc. So she walks up to it, knocks on it 3 times, and walks away. And the moment her head touches the pillow, something in the wardrobe knocks 3 times back. Obviously scared, she jumps up, runs out to the hallway, and tells nobody, but says that memory is etched in her mind so vividly, it's like she's there yesterday. She says that she didn't really think anything of it, and she kind of let it go, especially after they stopped visiting the village so often, until something happened in her bedroom that's located in the city. Now, this happened years later, but as she's trying to fall asleep in her bedroom, she just has this weird feeling that she is going to have a nightmare. And I don't know if it's a super common feeling to know when you were going to have a nightmare, but I was also one of those kids that knew when I was going to have a nightmare. Anyways, she ignores it and says out loud before she goes to bed, "It's fine, everything is going to be okay." But the dream she had was one of the scariest experiences that she's ever had. This dream takes place in the village home, in the room with her uncle's portrait. So that everything was black and white in this dream, and there was a light bulb hanging from the middle of the ceiling, swinging wildly, like out of an old horror film. And she just had locked eyes in on this portrait of her uncle, when all of a sudden, his eyes start pouring out this black paint. And she said she froze instantly and could feel her actual body tense up, like sleep paralysis. And then she felt it. She says there was a very dark presence standing behind her with its fingers wrapped around her shoulder, which in my mind looks absolutely terrifying. Like you can just barely feel their fingers wrapping around your shoulder where you can see them. Just as she's feeling these fingers wrap around her shoulder, there is a loud voice telling her to wake up. And on command, she woke up immediately, turned the lights on, and had them on the rest of the night. She says to this day that she still thinks of the portrait and wonders whether or not the presence that she feels is her uncle following her throughout life. Doesn't know if he was the one that was warning her in the dream or if he was the one standing behind her. But she has never told her family any of it. I honestly don't have anything to say about that story because it genuinely freaked me out. But if you have a scary ghost story, be sure to submit it to the email in my bio. But that's gonna do it for me. Stay tuned for more ghost stories.
If you travel a lot with your friends, or maybe you guys just go on a weekend getaway, you might not want to listen to this story. Before I start, somebody in the comments suggested that I show you the earrings that I'm wearing and tell you where I got them before I start, so that's what I'm gonna do. I think this is a beetle, not sure, but it came with this pack. There's grasshoppers, whatever that is, and I can't tell what this is either. Theses. I got them at Spencer's. They were $14.99, but they were buy 2 earrings and get 2 earrings free, so I bought this one and a shit ton more. So this guy and his friend had gone on a weekend trip and they were already on their way back home and they were in his car. It was getting really late and they were both really tired, so they decided to find a spot where they can park and get some sleep. They both knew that the next gas station would be really far away and they were not going to be able to make it because, again, they were both tired. They had partied all weekend and they just wanted to get at least an hour or two of sleep before continuing on the road. They ended up stopping at this foresty patch on the way and they decided to drive the car just into the forest, just far enough to where, like, if another car is coming, they're not going to be hit and they're not in anybody's way. As they're trying to fall asleep, they both jolted awake because they heard a really loud screech to what they think is an animal in the forest. He admits that it was a sound that he had never heard before, but it sounded almost like an animal that was in pain or maybe had gotten attacked. The sound was scary enough, but just being in that environment, in the situation, like in the middle of the night, in the car, trying to sleep in the forest that they have no idea what is in. But then hearing the sound just like took it up 10 notches and they were definitely terrified. He immediately turns the headlights on in the car just to see if the animal was near them or in front of them, just to see how far away it was. They didn't end up seeing anything and it was really dead silent after that, so he decided to turn the lights off again just to not call attention to themselves. As soon as he turned off those lights again, they heard the same screeching, painful sound again, but this time it was a lot closer to them. He remembers that he looked at his friend and his friend looked at him and he said, "What is that sound? Like, what is it coming from?" But again, he wanted to be honest with his friend and tell him, "Hey, that is not coming from any animal that I've heard of. I've never heard that sound before, but I don't know. It could be something that we just never encountered." He decided to turn the headlights on again and there it was, right in front of them. It was this thing that looked very bony, very pale, bald head with like just a little bit of hair at the top, walking on all fours. He said that this thing had really large eyes and that you can tell that this thing was looking straight at them. It didn't necessarily look like an animal because it looked more human-like than animal-like. He explains it as something being more human but very, very deformed. He doesn't know whether to call them the arms or that thing's legs, but that the front legs or arms were much longer than the back legs, and it was making that scream, that like painful scream that he explains he still hears in his nightmares sometimes. He remembers being in shock, obviously, at what was in front of him, and it was his friend who screamed at him, "Hey, turn the car on and put it in reverse. Let's get out of here. Let's go." He immediately turns the car on. He starts reversing to get back on the road, and when he does that, they both see this thing start charging straight at them as well. As this thing was running towards them, the last thing he could see was that this thing was like violently shaking its head, almost like if it was in pain, but still trying to get to them. He says that it almost looked like this thing had been hunting them down. He hit the gas so hard, he got on the street, immediately puts it on drive again, and could only see this thing from the rearview mirror now, but it was still coming at them. As he was going and he's looking back at the rear view and his friend's still looking back too, they noticed when it finally stopped, stood up on its hind legs, and just stood on the road watching them as they're driving away. Oh, that scene in my head is like, no thank you. It literally just stood there watching them escape until they just lost vision of this thing completely. Obviously, after that, neither of them were sleepy, neither of them had the intention of stopping somewhere else to get some rest, and they decided to just go ahead and try to get home. Till this day, they continue to question themselves and ask people, like, what was that thing that was hunting us down in the forest? Like, what could this thing have been? Honestly, I wouldn't even want to find out. I wouldn't even want to go back to where that place was. Yeah, no idea what that could have been. But what do you guys think?
snacks in hand. The vibe is set. And once I start, you won't forget. Don't eat too much, because you got to stay fine. But come on, bestie, it's story time. Damn, that sounded bad, but y'all know I'm still trying to get my voice back. Hey, bestie, I missed you. You got your cola? You got your snack? Okay, great. This story is from South Africa, so go ahead and go roll that. Yeah, I know y'all be rolling. Y'all don't just be eating. Don't forget to show me what you're eating in the comments, because I be wanting to come to y'all house and get a plate. Real quick, before I start the story, December 20th, I'm having a spa party in South Orange, New Jersey. So all my Jersey followers, come through. We're gonna have food, drinks, music, all that good stuff. And you get to hang out with Blizzy. We're gonna have us a great time. Anyway, on to the story. For the sake of the story, let's call this girl Ella. Ella knows why I did that. So Ella's mom is a primary school teacher. And she's like super creative. She's one of those teachers that you love at school because they have all these fun ideas. Like to the point where the principal personally goes to her whenever he's having an event and he needs ideas and he needs somebody to plan it properly. So she was pretty popular amongst the students, the teachers. The students loved her. Anyway, one afternoon, Ella's mom comes home from work, from the school. And she started complaining that her hip was hurting, which is normal because, she's of older age. So usually whenever she complains about her hip hurting, Ella would just give her a little massage and it'll be fine. Anyway, so that's what she did. She gave her mom a massage like usual, except this time, this pain is lasting for days. And then it got to a point where it was affecting the way that she walked. Like she was limping. So Ella's mom decided, hey, I'm going to take a day off because this pain is not going away and I need to figure out what I'm going to do. So she takes a day off to kind of just rest, But throughout the day, it seems like the pain was getting worse. It just wasn't going away. So Ella and her sister, their neighbor is actually a nurse. So they went next door and told the nurse what's happening. She came over and she gave Ella's mom some pain injections, but that still didn't work. And so their other neighbor ended up coming over to massage her again, but this time with a hot beanbag. But that still didn't work. And it was to the point where it got so bad where her mom ended up having to go to the hospital because nothing is working. Anyway, so at this point, Ella's mom is, in the hospital for a couple of days. And a day or two after, she's been in the hospital, Ella decided to sleep in her mom's bed because she misses her mommy. However, in her mom's room, she also had this storage room, right? And that storage room always creeped out Ella because the door wouldn't close because of how full the storage room is. It has mad stuff, so the door doesn't close. Anyway, so she's laying down in her mom's bed, she's facing the door, and she's scrolling on TikTok. And as she's laying there scrolling on TikTok, she hears a bull, like the animal, next to her ear. The sound that bulls make right before they're about to charge at somebody? It was that. So immediately, she's freaked out. So she jumped up and looked behind her, but nothing was behind her but that storage room. So that was very weird, right? Cool. So another day went by. Mom is still at the hospital. Mind you, at the time, Ella was in primary school. Anyway, so another day goes by and she's sitting in the living room thinking about everything. And she started to come to the conclusion that I think my mom is going through witchcraft. I think somebody is doing something to my mom because of that happened the day before when she was in her mom's bed. She's like, nah, I'm not stupid, bro. This gotta be witchcraft because nothing is working. I massaged her. The neighbor gave her pain injection. The other neighbor gave her a massage. She's at the hospital. Nothing is working. But she also ended up gaslighting herself. Damn, I might be overthinking it. Maybe it is medical. Maybe it's just a little complicated. But it's Anyway, so I guess Ella wasn't the only one that was thinking that. Ella's mom had to have been thinking the same thing too because her mom ended up hitting up her best friend's daughter, who is a sangoma. That means a witch doctor, but she's one of the good ones. Just, dot her I's and cross all her T's because medically nothing is working. So it gotta be, So they set up a date and the daughter comes over to do what she needs to do.
This is the woman who believes that the devil lives in Los Angeles and she almost sold her soul. Part 2. So after leaving the house, she said, just know this part 2, leaving the house wasn't the end of it. Something definitely followed her. For the next 3-4 nights, she didn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she felt the same pressure on her throat from the basement. And it wasn't like it was full on choking her, it was just uncomfortable, a reminder almost. She said the mirror in her room kept fogging over even though the air was cold. She said once she wiped it, she swore she saw writing under the condensation. Something curved like the same shape as the symbols on that old paper. She said after that day, she stopped checking the mirrors, whatever, let them fall. She said after that night, the worst part is that her voice stopped working. She would open her mouth and try to sing and nothing would come out, not even a whisper. She went to urgent care, ENT, even a vocal coach, and all of them told her that there was nothing wrong with her physically. So she started self-isolating. Her friends thought she was depressed and her mom thought she was overwhelmed. She would wake up to random tapping in the house. She doesn't really know if it's coming from the window, the walls, or the mirror. After the 4th night, Angela was tired mentally, physically, and spiritually. She remembers staring at her ceiling thinking, maybe this is just how LA works for some people. And then she said something happens after that she still cannot fully explain. She woke up out of nowhere at like 4 a.m. It was pitch black, dead silent, and y'all, there was someone sitting at the foot of her bed. She says not a shadow, not sleep paralysis, a figure, very tall, and it's just sitting there still, just watching Angela. She says she noticed that the room wasn't actually cold in this moment. It was hot, like humid breath was like hitting her face. She said her voice still wouldn't work, but in her head, she's still hearing the voice of the woman from the house telling her, you've already been chosen. She said the figure leaned forward, and I swear to God, right before it reached for Angela, her phone buzzed, saved by the bell, because one single notification broke the whole thing apart. And she says the weirdest part of this all that she still cannot explain. The text was from a number that she didn't recognize. And the text said, don't engage, leave immediately. She blinked and the figure was gone, nowhere to be found. She said for once, her room felt normal again and she could breathe. Angela said she packed her stuff within the hour. She didn't shower, didn't look in the mirror. She got in her car and just drove. Angela said she didn't even have a real destination. She just felt like she needed to get out of the city because whatever figure that was, she figured that it couldn't follow her across state lines. She said she ended up stopping at a small Haitian botanica just outside of LA. And she said she wasn't even looking for this store. It was just on her drive. So she parked, get out of the car. When she walked in, the older woman behind the counter didn't ask for her name, didn't ask what she needed. She looked up to her and said, something is feeding on your voice. Angela didn't cry, she didn't explain, and she didn't question the lady. She said the woman mixed something in a small glass bowl, rum, ashes, something red that she didn't recognize, and she told her to wash her hands with it, then her throat, then her head. And the lady told her that if you signed nothing, it cannot claim you, but it can attach itself. You left the door open and now we close it. Angela says that she noticed that the lady's voice sounded tired. Like she'd seen too many girls come to LA with hope and leave with something missing. She made her repeat a short prayer in Creole. She said her voice cracked on the first line. By the second, a sound finally came out. The lady told her that the tapping on the wall, the figure on her bed, and the contract said those weren't metaphors, they're recruitment. She said certain circles in LA don't ask you to sign a deal. They ask you to offer yourself, your image, your voice, your presence, your dream. And not everyone gets chosen. But the ones who do don't get approached just because they're desperate. They get approached because they're gifted as well. Brightness attracts hunger, she said. Before she left, the lady warned her, don't make music here. Don't record here. Don't perform here. LA has already marked you, and if you go back to sing, it will find you again. Angela said, and for a long time, she didn't believe her. And at some point, Angela really started to feel like this whole thing was just taking a toll on her mental health. She doesn't have a family history with schizophrenia or hallucinations. She genuinely doesn't understand what this is. She said she ended up leaving LA to go back to her mom's for a break and to recuperate her mind to try to figure out WTF just happened. She says the second she left LA, her voice came back fully. She says now she still sings sometimes. She doesn't perform anymore, but she is done with the industry. She says she definitely never stepped foot back in LA. She said some opportunities aren't opportunities, they're invitations. She didn't sell her soul, but she's glad that God had her after all. I'm trying to record an outro, but I really can't talk, so bye. Somebody submitted a spooky story saying that they encountered the devil in LA and they nearly sold their soul. I am back with another spooky story, and I don't know if you want to watch this one at night. We're gonna call the person who submitted the story Angela. Angela says that she's sending this anonymously because she doesn't want anybody connecting the dots. Just know that she came to LA for music, left when she realized that the devil may not just be a biblical figure and that he lives right here on earth. specifically Los Angeles. Angela goes on to say that people joke about selling your soul for fame. No one talks about how ordinary the first step looks. For Angela, it started with an invite. A friend of a friend told her about a small industry gathering in the hills. Nothing crazy, just networking, good view, a few producers, and a few up-and-coming artists. She says when you're chasing opportunities, you say yes. So she went. She pulls up and the house was gorgeous. But the energy felt wrong. When she walks in, it seems like everybody was smiling. Their smiles looked forced. The way people were talking in the house is as though they're whispering. They're talking so low as if they didn't want to wake something up. Angela said the second she felt how she felt, she should have gone home. And then she says someone important, she's not gonna name who, recognized her from a clip she posted and called her voice rare. They got into this conversation, they're talking back and forth. Now this is someone that Angela admired. They get a drink, they're talking. Next thing Angela knows, she's being led downstairs to a private room. The person that she was talking to told her that there was a studio downstairs. He asked her if she wanted to check it out. She was like, sure. When they got downstairs, that's when everything changed. The room wasn't a studio. It was more like a lounge. She said there was red lamps, velvet seats, and one big mirror that covered the entire wall. 2 men and a woman was already inside of that room. They all looked like normal people. However, it seems like these people have been waiting for Angela. So they get in the room, they ask her to sit, and they ask Angela a few questions. First question was what she wanted from music. Angela said the usual: success, stability, impact, tours. Now, Angela said that the way that these people were listening is as though they've heard this exact story like 1,000 times before. After Angela gets done, the woman leans in and says, we can give you all of that, but nothing in this city belongs to you for free. Angela says whole time she's laughing because she thinks the lady is being metaphorical. Spoiler alert, she wasn't. She opens a small leather case, slides it across the table, and inside was a sheet of paper. Not a contract, not a deal memo, something else. Old. Too old. The writing itself wasn't even in English. The paper itself had a weird smell radiating off of it. It smelled of incense and ash. She looks at the paper and told them that she didn't understand it. And now one of the men smiles and says, you don't have to understand. You just have to sign and the city will take care of the rest. Angela, at first she froze. Then she gets annoyed. Thought this was some weird hazing ritual. She said she wasn't signing anything without reading it first. And y'all, the woman tilted her head and said, you already read it. You read it the moment you walked in this room. It's been waiting for you since you got off the plane. Angela gets distracted because she could have sworn she saw something flicker in the mirror. When she looks up, it wasn't a glitch. She caught a reflection that wasn't in the room. She saw from the mirror that it was a very tall figure standing way too close, watching her. When she looks around her, she sees nothing. At that point, Angela stood up immediately. Temperature drops like it's suddenly freezing cold in this room. Her throat starts to tighten up as if someone was choking her. Man says, if you walk away, you will never know success. Because we're giving you the success right here. Angela says she pushes them back and ran up the stairs. The party upstairs was still happening like normal, like nothing just happened downstairs. When she steps outside, the whole house went quiet behind her. She says she gets home and she says that night and forward, she had the worst nightmare of being trapped in hell. Her life started going downhill. You will never believe how this story ends. I honestly can't believe it. If you want to hear how Angela's story ends, this is already 4 minutes long, so leave a comment for part 2. Make sure you hit the plus button for more spooky content.